So this area originally was a domain of Native Americans. And the Potawatomi were here.
Yes.
And specifically, they were at Rum Village.
Wow.
And the really cool thing is Rum Village Nature Center were named after an Indian village, an Indian chief named Turum. T-O-R-U-M. In the Potawatomi language, it was pronounced Torum.
Okay.
And so that's really how the park got its name. Wow. Not after a beverage, but after a Native American Indian chief.
Yeah. You heard that there. That's Garry Harrington, the director of the Rum Village Nature Center, talking about how the park got its name. More of that later, but first, thank you for listening to another episode of Round the Bend Now and Then. My name is Matt Emery, and I'm a local history nerd. My main mission in this podcast, as well as other Round the Bend material, is to create engaging content that shares how intertwined the South Bend and Mishawaka area's past is to our present. In the podcast, I interview local leaders, business owners, and community members to help tell their stories, because their stories help tell the story of South Bend and Mishawaka. In this episode, you'll learn all about the history of one of South Bend's most unique public parks, Rum Village Park, as I meet with the director of the Rum Village Nature Center, Garry Harrington. I learned a ton from Garry, and I know that you will as well. We talk about everything from how the park's beautiful hills were formed and have remained unchanged for over 15,000 years, to the fact that it was an actual, documented Native American village up until the 1820s. You'll learn the story behind the name of the park, and contrary to popular belief, it is not named after the alcoholic beverage. We talk about how the land was so very close to being sold and subdivided into a neighborhood. And we, of course, discuss the beloved Storyland Zoo and how people still ask about it to this day. And who can forget about Safetyville? So I had to ask him a question about that as well. You'll learn all about the positive changes that the park has experienced in the last few decades and all that the present-day park offers to our community today. Be sure to visit Rum Village Park and the Nature Center, and you'll see why we talk about it so enthusiastically. Before we dive into the interview, I highly encourage our listeners to visit and support the local sponsors of this episode, Allie's Cafe and Catering and In Rugco Studio and Gift Shop. Christmas is approaching, and you'll find quite the unique gifts at In Rugco. And while you're out and about shopping, fill your belly at Allie's Cafe. And when you stop by Allie's or In Rugco, please tell them that you heard about them on this podcast. Links to the websites are in the show notes to this episode. Thank you, Allie's Cafe and In Rugco. I truly value our partnership. And now, learn all about Rum Village Park in our interview with Garry Harrington, the director of the Rum Village Nature Center. Well, hey, I'm sitting here with Garry Harrington, the director of the Rum Village Nature Center. Garry, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
100%, absolutely. You know, I want to highlight and lift up a lot of our local buildings, local areas, local parks. And so we have so many good things to offer at our parks. And I want our listeners, I want them to know some of the things that you know they can experience at Rum Village today, but also there's rich history in our parks too. And so really that's just the main gist of today.
Absolutely.
You know?
We've got wonderful history at Rum Village all throughout the park system, but of course I'm biased.
You're a little biased.
I'm just a little biased after being at Rum Village as long as I have been.
That's awesome. Hey, Garry, just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, high school, all that good stuff.
Well, hey, I'm quite the South Bend resident.
All right.
In that,
we love to hear that.
Yeah, I grew up in River Park, went to the old Nooner School, went right down the street to John Adams, went right across the street to IUSB.
Oh, man, East Side.
Yes, quite the East Sider. And got my degree in biology, decided I'm going to be a naturalist.
Yeah.
There really wasn't a place to go to school locally to be a naturalist.
Okay.
So I had to pay my dues by going to places like Seney Wildlife Refuge in the heart of the UP. I went down to the Great Smoky Mountains. Wonderful experience there. Came back, worked as a naturalist seasonally at Potato Creek. Worked for the county parks.
Yeah.
Went back to Potato for a seasonal gist, and then went to Rum Village and worked there full time. under Carol Reway as her assistant. And then eventually I became the director, as I have been for, well, I've been there 30 years now.
Ooh, wow.
30 great years.
Mid-90s you started there. That's amazing.
Yes.
Wow. When you were a kiddo, were you were obviously into outdoors and all that good stuff?
Oh, yeah.
So you're able to kind of match a little bit of your passions in your career.
Yes. Yep. Spent a lot of time hanging out by the river, fishing, and just killing time in a positive way, just looking at the wildlife along the St. Joseph River.
Man, and as we'll talk about, actually, the next question is the natural formation of Rum Village. It is, to me, it's like no other city park in South Bend. It's quite unique. Talk to me about how all the hills formed and just describe the landscape for me.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story. It's pretty involved, but I'll give you the short version of that 5-hour story.
Right.
So to get to the point, it's formed by glaciers. So about 16,000 years ago, we had glaciers that covered most of northern Indiana. And so they formed hills in some places and valleys in others, and it left topography at Rum Village and other places in the county similar to what we have in Brown County, but a lot in southern Indiana. People are familiar with that.
Very hilly, very beautiful. Just
very hilly.
Very different than here.
what they call knobs and kettles. The high points are the knobs, the low parts are the kettles. But most of South Bend, Mishawaka, Elkhart, Niles, flat as a pancake.
Absolutely.
But we do have our high points in places like Rum Village. And if you go away from the city, either to the north or to the south, you realize, hey, there is some pretty cool topography. And you do realize that we actually are in a valley.
Yes.
And as a kid, I was always perplexed. Like, I defy anybody to show me the St. Joseph River Valley. It is flat as a pancake in River Park. Where is this valley? But you can see it actually in certain places. And we actually do a bus tour where we go to Rum Village, we go into the auditorium, we talk about glacial history in a very rudimentary way, simple way, and then we get on a bus, a 56-passenger bus. We cruise all over St. Joseph County looking at glacial land features that people have passed maybe, who knows, the last 50 years. They didn't know the story behind it. It's a big eye-opener for the older folks, and they really like it a lot. So it's one of the things we offered at Rum Village periodically.
Nice. And hey, I'll be sure to advertise to our listeners the next time you have a bus tour. Let me know.
Great.
And we'll put it on our socials and all that good stuff. That'd be fun. Definitely. Yeah, Rum Village it's like no other city park is in that it's not flat. It is quite hilly.
Yes, and you can appreciate it the most once the leaves fall.
Absolutely. Yes.
And speaking of fall, that's a great time to come out and see when the leaves are changing. You don't have to go far to appreciate really beautiful leaf coloration in this area. Once those leaves fall, then you can really appreciate the hills and valleys right here.
True.
5 minutes from the heart of downtown South Bend.
And not only the beautiful autumn leaves in Rum Village there, but you have a vantage point to which you can overlook the city and see all the beautiful trees too.
You can.
I mean, it's gorgeous.
And you can see the Golden Dome very easily from the high bluffs at Rum Village.
Yeah, which is wild. It's the south side of town and that's north, in sharing the history behind the area and the land at Rum Village. Obviously, European settlers have not been in northern Indiana this whole time. Native Americans were around the land at first. Talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah, so this area originally was a domain of Native Americans, and the Potawatomi were here.
Yes.
And specifically, they were at Rum Village.
Wow.
And the really cool thing is Rum Village Nature Center were named after an Indian village, an Indian chief named Turum. T-O-R-U-M. In the Potawatomi language, it was pronounced Torum.
Okay.
And so that's really how the park got its name. Wow. Not after a beverage, but after a Native American Indian chief. And so they actually have documentation we do at the Nature Center. You can find it on the internet where Chief Turum signed documentation, treaty in Chicago in 1829. And they make reference of the guy in 1821, I believe it is.
Wow.
And they call it Rum's, apostrophe, possessive, Rum's Village.
Yeah.
And then the belief is that eventually it got shortened to Rum Village. Rum's Village went to Rum Village, and we know as Rum Village Park today.
That's just wild. And that his name is on signed treaties. Am I correct?
Yes.
As a part of the unfortunate Indian or Native American removal.
Right. But yes, there's not too many places we know of that we can say, hey, we know that there was an Indian village here. There's a lot of speculation that there were in other places all over St. Joseph County and the area, but this is one place where we have documented proof that they were here.
Yes. Wow. That's it's amazing, man. And you got to imagine the vantage point they had several hundred years ago overlooking this city is just so different than buildings and streets that we see today, you know?
Yes, it was definitely, it was a wilderness, a vast wilderness. Yeah.
Literally. Goodness gracious. Then in my research of Rum Village Park, and it's really just reading some old newspaper articles and everything, the land surrounding it ended up being, after the Native Americans had left, the land surrounding it farmland. Is that correct? And they continued to find some Native American relics and everything out there as well.
They did, and a good portion of it to the east was farmed.
Okay,
it was relatively flat, unlike the rest of it. But they found interesting things, like the remains, like unfinished artifacts, and they called them turtlebacks.
That's right.
Yeah, they found these turtlebacks that were kind of cached, and the belief was that they were kind of stashed there years ago. And what I'm talking about years ago, I did a little research on these. These were not done by the Potawatomi. These might have been done by woodland Indians maybe 1,000 years ago or more.
Oh, wow. So long time.
So the Rum Village property might have been occupied by definitely Potawatomi. Before that, maybe Miami.
Wow.
And before that, woodland Indians.
That's crazy.
Maybe 1,500 years ago. So
that's all right there.
Yeah, it's really a cool thing to think about.
That is wild. There's many folks who are from our area who drive to Rum Village Park. You pretty much have to take Ewing Avenue to get there, and it's a main drag east-west through most of our city. That you name Ewing, how does that connect to that area there?
Yeah, so really the story is this: the property that is now consists of Rum Village Park, which is 1/4 of 1 square mile. Originally, and this property was under the domain of no one. It was nobody owned it, but it was inhabited by the Native Americans. And then the property was ceded by the U.S. government in the 1820s. And then the property was given as a land grant, 1 square mile, to someone by the name of Burnett, Rebecca Burnett, and she was 1/2 Native American. And so she was ceded this property. She had it, let's see, in 1826, and in 1831, in steps the Ewing brothers. And the Ewing brothers buy this property, 1/4 of 1 square mile. 1/4 of that property still within the confines of Rum Village Park. And so they buy it for a whopping $850.
In 1830.
In 1830. But this is prime real estate with wonderful hardwood timber that is quite valuable. More valuable than $850.
Absolutely.
But, so yeah, they got that for practically nothing.
Steal. Right.
And the Native Americans that were living there, the Potawatomi, their habit was to occupy that for 3 seasons. In the winter, they would either go north or they would go south.
I see.
And they would probably join other Potawatomi, and then they would come back in the springtime again, and they would farm that.
Yep.
They would occupy that area and then leave again in the winter. They would do that for years and years and years and years.
Yep.
Well, then it was sold in May of 1831, and the Ewing brothers, one would only guess that they're the new owners. They probably didn't want the Native Americans living there, so they left that fall as they was their normal practice, but they never came back again.
Yeah.
And then within 4, 5, 6 years, they were permanently removed, forcibly removed to Kansas.
By law.
Yes.
That's just, that's awful. Ooh. But yeah, that Ewing family, they owned a good chunk of that land down there. So
they did. And that's where Ewing Avenue fame comes into it. And they were wealthy, influential. One was a senator, one of the Ewing brothers.
Oh, okay.
But the property stayed within the Ewings, which for us in South Bend wasn't necessarily a bad thing.
Okay.
Because they had money.
Yep.
And because they had the wherewithal to keep that property the way that it was.
They didn't fold to men with interests to develop the land.
Right. It was generational property that went from one generation to another, to another, to another. And then Mary Ewing eventually wound up marrying a Studebaker.
That's right.
In early 1900s.
Okay.
And then fortunately in 1916, they decided to basically turn that property over to the city. They leased that property as a park, and then it was bought outright in the early to mid 1940s.
Okay. And the folks who are listening to this now know Rum Village's beautiful park and everything like that. There was if the Ewings would have folded to pressure, or if the landowners would have folded to pressure to sell and to divide that land up, Rum Village could have been a neighborhood. Am I right?
Rum Village could have been one more neighborhood. It could have been one more housing development. It could have been one more Walmart, one more strip mall, and it could have been a series of parking lots and paved streets, et cetera, et cetera.
That is crazy. And when we met a month or so ago at the Nature Center, you had mentioned Twickenham Hills. And that, to me, would be somewhat of a similar vibe in a neighborhood that's hilly, right?
I think it would have been very similar to that. It would have been, city streets with there and houses there, but you wouldn't have something that was pretty much untouched since glacial times 16,000 years ago.
That's wild.
One of the ways I explain this is to the kids. I said, imagine this. Imagine that you have this protective barrier over 160 acres.
Yep.
And while everything else around it gets changed and developed, what's inside that protective barrier does not change since glacial times to right now today.
That's wild.
It's miraculous that this property is in the auspices of the city of South Bend. It's a treasure.
Folks, I am proud that one of my all-time favorite restaurants, Allie's Cafe and Catering, is a sponsor on this episode. We did an episode with Betty a while back, who owns Allie's along with her husband, Chuck. And as you heard in that episode, Allie's is about as locally owned and family operated as you can get. I'm proud to be spreading the good word about Allie's Cafe, as I have been a customer there for over 20 years. Our sons are 16 and 23, and both of them have been going to Allie's with us for as long as they can remember. And speaking of family, that is the feeling that you get as soon as you step in and interact with the staff and other guests. Waitresses there treat you like family, and that is why they have literally served generations of customers. Those who were once children eating their Mickey Mouse pancakes at Allie's over 20 years ago are now parents themselves and are bringing their own children to Allie's. To me, that is a true testament to the success of a local establishment. But being nice is great and all, but let me tell you about their food. Their menu is quite diverse, from breakfast items, including my absolute favorite, the breakfast burrito, and my wife's favorite, biscuits and gravy, to hamburgers, to sandwiches, to wraps and salads, to name a few. But they don't stop there. Since 1997, they've built quite the catering service also. Over those years, they've served countless events, weddings, funerals, parties, and so forth. And to me, simply saying, since 1997, tells me they're doing something right. They're located at 2323 Mishawaka Avenue, about a block east of Ironwood. And to check out all that they have to offer, simply head to their website at alliescafe.com. Folks, I can't encourage you enough to stop by Allie's and grab a meal. And if you see me in there stuffing my face with a giant breakfast burrito, don't laugh. Just let me enjoy the tasty goodness. Thank you again, Allie's, for sponsoring this episode. And you had mentioned that it ended up, they did not sell out. There was a huge push to turn it into parkland, and eventually it was turned into a park. And early on, there's some neat old pictures that I've seen on the Facebook pages of the kids sledding down the hill there. I forgot what they called it. I forgot what the Suicide Hill or something like that.
It was adjacent to Suicide Hill,
okay,
which many people still remember Suicide Hill because they to this day they call it Suicide Hill.
Really?
For a good reason. A lot of the people do not use that section of the hill any longer.
Okay.
They use the portion further to the west because it's safer.
Yeah, it doesn't go on into Ewing.
Right. Because you had to bail before you got to Ewing, because that would not be good to go into Ewing because there's too much traffic. Yeah. But back in the day, when some of the old-timey pictures that I showed you, that was circa that was about 1916, 1917.
Yeah.
There were Model Ts around. There were very few cars around. It was nothing but a dirt road. Yeah. So you could kind of let the kids have at it.
Of course.
And what they did, they ran water mains up there. They let the water cascade down.
Really?
It was a giant glaze of ice. Really? So all the neighborhood kids just had a blast going up and down those hills. So, but that's the way it was back there. There's no liability. And
correct.
You just, they had the 5-year-olds and the teenagers all going up and down the hill together, unsupervised. But that's the way it was.
That's the way it was. Hey, when they got cold, they just started a fire in a metal trash can, right?
Right. There you go.
Oh, that's funny. That's great. That's neat, though, to put water and make that ice.
Deliberately ran the water to make a gigantic ice slide.
Man. And we know winters probably used to be a little bit more harsh back then, too, but who knows? Then after, I don't know, in the mid-1950s, so a good 40 years or so after it's become a park, there was a huge push to build a children's zoo in Rum Village Park. And Lord, do I know all about this children's zoo.
You know more about it than I do at this point.
Oh my gosh. Do you have people come, other than this crazy guy who came in asking you about it, do you have people come in talking about that anymore or no?
We still do all the time.
Really?
Yes. Well, it was that impactful for the community, Storyland Zoo, for both the kids who are now, adults and not super young at that point, but also the parents, because, they have fond memories of taking those kids to the park. It was a wonderful experience for them. They look back at it with nostalgia. Yeah. But it was, a gentler time in our history, right?
True.
And a kinder, gentler time, and there were kids and there were parents and grandkids that were all having a blast at one of the biggest attractions in all of the Michiana area, bar none.
Over 1 million people just in that little 25-year period.
Yes, it's crazy. But
all right there.
Virtually everybody in this immediate area, in the Michiana area, knows about Rum Village and Storyland Zoo.
It's wild. It's amazing to me. And it was all right there, and close to Storyland Zoo was another little area called Safetyville that when I was a kid I was born in 1978, it had already been made and everything, but it was the neatest thing to see this little city area and to have like police officers talk about safety and everything there. Any stories about Safetyville and anything like that?
Yeah, I've got I've got memories of it all, of course. But when it comes to Safetyville, I mean, that was around, I want to say it actually started, I don't know if you have information on the specific starting date, but I want to say
mid-70s.
I want to say mid-70s or maybe before that.
Okay.
And the idea was, to, of course, like you said, to teach kids about traffic safety, and they had programs for kids all over South Bend coming out there learning about traffic safety.
Okay.
And they had little renditions of buildings that you'd find in downtown South Bend. And at one time they had go-karts that kids could ride around in. They had little pedal carts. And they had actually functioning small stoplights that let kids learn, about traffic safety. Later, they got financing from the DARE officers, and they would go into the schools and teach kids about, the ills of drugs and drug use.
Right.
Unfortunately, that was where a lot of their funding was coming from, and that money dried up. And as a consequence, so did Safetyville. And that went by the wayside. It sat vacant for a long time. And now, of course, that was finally leveled, and now it's the dog park.
Which is a nice little dog park, by the way. A little shout out to that. There's 3 different little sections there. So it depending on if you're worried about the big dogs, you can bring your little dogs in a little section. And it's nice it's shaded. I mean, the trees are up there, and you can still see the remnants of the Safetyville roads in there. So your dog can run up along the old Safetyville roads. It's pretty cool.
And your pup can do that adjacent to where the old Storyland Zoo
was.
But although it's rather difficult to see any remnants of that.
Yes. Real difficult to see any remnants in the woods there. We stop here for a quick word from one of our sponsors. You've heard me talk about In Rugco Studio and Gift Shop multiple times on the podcast and on social media. I am very proud to partner with them, and I encourage you all to stop by and check out all that they have to offer. In Rugco Studio and Gift Shop is located in a cool, old, historic Mishawaka storefront located at 220 East Mishawaka Avenue, right across from the entrance to Central Park. At this family-owned gift shop, you'll find Mishawaka and South Bend-inspired teas, coffee mugs, stickers, and magnets that you just will not find anywhere else. But this is more than just a hometown pride store. You'll also find national brands like Lodge Cast Iron, Minnetonka, Darn Tough Socks, and Smart Wool. There are gourmet food options, outdoor clothing and footwear for men and women, and seasonal decor. There's even a small batch bakery located inside, Lola's Pastry, Bread, and Jam Bakery. This is a true Mishawaka destination. To truly get a sense of all that In Rugco Studio and Gift Shop has to offer, you just have to visit their store. Again, at 220 East Mishawaka Avenue, across from the Central Park entrance. Once you're there, you'll understand why I'm describing the place so enthusiastically and why I'm so excited that we are partnering, as they are a locally owned small family business who is entrenched in our community and dedicated to seeing it thrive. Their website, indianarugco.com, to check out all that they have to offer. The link is in the show notes. And now, back to the episode. Man, the last 30 years or so, there's been somewhat of a renaissance and somewhat of a changes in Rum Village Park over the last, 2 or 3 decades. Talk to me about that over your time there.
Yeah, like a lot of parks, Rum Village has gone through kind of a metamorphosis, and we've gone through some changes for the better. And so, the people who knew Rum Village and some of the struggles that we've had, 30 years ago would be very surprised at Rum Village today. Definitely, we've done a 180. Rum Village gets a lot of great use. It's a very safe place to be. What I see is, from sunup to sundown, people using that park in a very positive way. We see moms, dads, little kids. We see grandparents. We see kids on bikes. We see people walking their dog. We see people using the trails in the woods. We see a lot of great use pretty much all the time, year round.
That is so awesome. That's so neat to hear. That is so cool to hear. And another attraction at Rum Village, and it was built, was it around the 1970s? The Nature Center.
Yes. 1974
and if I'm not mistaken, is that the only, any other parks have anything similar to a nature center like that, or no?
Not close to the city.
Okay, right. I'm saying like the South Bend Venue Parks and Art.
No.
So talk to me anything about the history of the Nature Center or anything that you're aware of.
Well, one thing that's great is that we will be celebrating our 50th anniversary of Rum Village Nature Center.
That is unbelievable. So it would have been 1974 it was made, or
1974, actually. Its debut was December 15th of 1974.
So we're literally coming up on the 50-year anniversary of the Nature Center.
And we're planning on doing something in recognition of that.
Okay.
And we're not sure exactly what the date will be.
All right. Well, let us know. I'll advertise for sure.
Stay tuned for that. But really, the catalyst for doing that was two biology professors from Notre Dame who came to the property, looked at this and thought, wow, this is really something. We need to not only preserve this and enhance this, but this would be a great place for a nature center so people could learn the value of this wonderful location. And so that was really the start of the nature center. And that's why we have a nature center today.
Yeah.
If it were not for these individuals, I don't know that Rum Village Nature Center would exist.
Wow, that's amazing. So it's just two Notre Dame professors just kind of had a little vision and had an idea and collaborated with the city, and they built it, huh?
Yes.
Wow, that's neat. And 50 years, that's awesome too.
50 years. We've done a lot of programming for a lot of kids and a lot of adults too, from 3 to 93 and everybody in between.
50 years, and you've been there for 60% of that.
Yeah, that's crazy. I've been there. This is my 30th there.
You've been there for 60% of this.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you have a hand in it, of it. That's great.
Yes. I hope it's for the better.
Yeah. Oh, it has to be. Right? I mean, the past 30 years, the park is definitely shined. So that's awesome. Hey, with your job over the last 30 years in working at the Nature Center and being the director of the Nature Center, I'm sure you've had some interesting situations, some fun stories, some challenging situations. But what are some of the most rewarding aspects of your job?
Really, I would say the most rewarding aspect is just my interaction with people.
Yeah.
And just teaching people about the value of the city and what we have.
Okay.
And the natural resources we have right here.
Right.
It's amazing sometimes when I'm going into a classroom, I'm getting ready to talk to kids about reptiles and amphibians, about mammals, about plants, about insect, about birds, what have you. Sometimes I'll hear the kids chatting, or I might be chatting to them, said, hey, last night I was watching the show on Animal Planet, or Discovery, or National Geo, and they had this really cool animal. They had this cobra, or they had this lion on Africa, or they had this cheetah. And I'm thinking, I hear these kids talking. I'm thinking, is it possible these kids know more about wildlife on the other side of the planet?
It probably is possible.
Then they know what the cool stuff right in their own backyard. I thought, it's criminal if they know more about stuff in Africa or India or Australia, although those things are really cool to me too.
Yeah, of course.
Do they know this cool stuff we have right here? So that's why I'm all about, in my old age, making sure kids know what we have right here, the cool things we have to offer. I try to make it relevant, relatable, recognizable.
The R's.
Yeah, the R's, the 3 R's, impactful, the things that fortify their sense of place. So those are the things that are really rewarding when we get people out there. Some of these kids, unfortunately, just don't have an opportunity for mom and dad to take them out into the woods. Some kids are frightened of the woods. So it's really rewarding when kids are kind of apprehensive about going into the woods and they come out and say, gosh, that was great. I had a fun time out in the woods. So that's what we want. We want people to appreciate the things that are right here in your own backyard. And we want kids to appreciate the nature and wildlife that's right here in the Michiana area.
100%. And you are correct. And I've worked with children in our community the last 25 years, and some children have all types of worldly experiences. Other children may live 2 miles from the woods and they've never been in it, and so it's so neat and rewarding to be able to kind of talk to a kiddo and just see the look on their face when they're discovered something new and discovered that they like it.
Yes.
It's so neat.
Absolutely. And, it's great. I like to take trips to far off places in the United States. I like to do a lot of European travel. But for some people, going to Potato Creek, going to the county parks, going to Rum Village, that is going to be their Great Smoky Mountains.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever going to take them. But they need that experience, to go with nature and wildlife and to have those experiences, because this might be it for them. So we need to encourage people to go out, get those kids outside in the woods.
Absolutely. Get them out there, get dirty, have fun, and get sweaty and smelly and enjoy it. What are some challenging aspects of your job?
There's a few. It's one aspect is just getting the message out to folks. Back in the day when everybody used to get something called a newspaper, everybody was kind of on the same groove. And when we would advertise something, everybody got the newspaper.
Right.
Now when you try to reach people,
It's hard.
Yeah, social media.
You think it'd be easier, but it's harder because there's a lot of avenues.
There are. Not everybody listens to the same radio station. Some people don't listen to radio at all.
Exactly.
People don't necessarily watch TV because they get their news from multiple sources. And even the multiple sources in social media, people are getting them from different places. So I would say reaching people and getting the attention of folks for the freebies that we offer at Rum Village and the program that we offer and the hikes that we offer. That's becoming more challenging.
Just getting the word out.
Getting the word out is one of the tough things.
Yep. And well, hopefully I can help, just by doing this episode here, and our listeners can get the word out. And I'm hoping that our listeners, spread the good word too.
I would just say that, one thing that people should know is that we've got a lot of free things at Rum Village. I tell people we're the last of the freebies in the Michiana area because you don't have to pay to come into the park. Some places that hit you to get in the park. You don't have to pay to come to the nature center. Some places will hit you for that. You don't have to pay to disc golf.
Yep, that's free.
Just bring your own
Absolutely.
discs. You don't have to pay to mountain bike right across the road.
Bring your bike.
At the annex, bring your own bike. You can hike for free. There's no cost there. Monday through Friday, first come, first serve for the 3 pavilions that we have.
Nice. And people use it. People use them.
People use them. And so you can do a lot of free things at Rum Village. And, the economy's tough. People are looking to save money. Utilize what your tax-paying dollars are going for. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And exercise is free too. And every single time I'm in that park, I see people walking around the circle. Every time,
we get a lot of joggers, a lot of people on bikes, a lot of people with the doggies. So
it's a hype. It's a happening spot.
It's a happening spot. You'll get a good workout walking or riding that bike because it's relentless. You're either going up a hill or you're going down a hill. There's no flat place on that road.
Even walking the disc golf course, you're sweating and heart pumping, So, all right, Garry. Well, hey, I appreciate your time totally. And people, the more our people know about our city parks and about everything that they have to offer and also the history behind it, the more the better,
Absolutely. 56 park properties that we maintain. So if you don't come to Rum Village, you don't have to. There's a park close to you that you can utilize for free.
Unreal. So, all right. Well, hey, thank you, Garry.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for listening to another episode of Round the Bend Now and Then. An extra special thanks to Garry Harrington, the director of the Rum Village Nature Center. Garry, thank you for your passion for the South Bend area in general, but specifically thank you for all of your work over the last 30 years at the Rum Village Nature Center. Your dedication and passion towards the parkland is truly contagious, and thank you for spreading that passion and teaching others over the last 3 decades. Again, folks, visit the local sponsors of this episode, Allie's Cafe and Catering and In Rug Coast Studio and Gift Shop. When you stop by, tell them that you heard about them on our podcast. Join us again next time and learn more about South Bend and Mishawaka's now and then.